Welcome to the Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Conscious investing begins, it begins actually every single day in how we view things and the people that we meet and bring into our lives. So this past July, I happened to be at an event and I met Brady prior to that. We met in breakout rooms and such. So we actually met for the first time in person. However, meeting people in real life is super powerful and really important. So today, like 6 months after meeting in person, we finally have an opportunity to record a very transparent conversation on our investing life. And I'm really stoked out on this conversation. So Brady, I just want to say thank you for being an awesome human being. And thank you for joining me on this episode 6 months later.
Yeah, I've been really excited about it because you're right. We met, I don't know how long ago we met, but we'd seen each other, met each other many, many times, met in person with you and your husband there. And I am super excited to be here. And thanks, Julie, for having me on. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope people get a lot from it. And, that's why we're here to help other people. So, yeah, really excited to be here.
I think everybody who knows me knows that I love what I do. And if I'm not having fun, I will work my tail off and I will hustle and I will do everything, but I'm going to have fun doing it. So the fun factor is totally going to be there. But you said something. So we've been talking off air for a few minutes and, just planning out this conversation. So it's a very calculated conversation. No, if you're listening, I don't do calculated conversations. Right. It's a very organic conversation. But you said something and it triggered. Your wife works for a nonprofit. I used to be a public school educator, have a heart for helping. We have this, our families have this shared mindset for really serving and helping empower people to financially build and grow wealth. And you said this word. You said you want to help people and you want this investment strategy to be accessible to all people. And immediately I was thinking about this training I went to about accessibility for learning. And then I started thinking about within building and zoning and all of that, right? We have to have so many, accessible units, for people who might be disabled in some capacity. Right. And I just thought that was a really interesting segue to think about how, inaccessible syndicates are to most people.
Yeah. And I think, it's really fun to kind of talk to people about it as well, because they have this idea of they hear the word syndication and people's brain starts to melt for some reason, right?
Oh, totally.
Yes. It's so true. And it's and it kind of turns off. And then it's you start talking to people about it and what it really means. And honestly, it's extremely accessible. It's really just, hey, you want to invest in real estate. You've got a team of people now working for you, literally working for you, and you get to invest in real estate. You get to participate in so much of the benefits of it, but there's a whole team beside you doing all the work. And so, yeah, I really enjoy those investor conversations where we get to kind of unpack, one, what are their goals? What do they really want? Because investing in real estate it's a broad term in and of itself. But there's always something in back of it, right? There's always something behind, I want to do this. And so I really enjoy understanding from people, why do you really want to do this? And for a lot of people, it's tied to family, it's tied to extra income, generational wealth, whatever it might be. But a lot of times that roadblock in getting from, I want to invest in real estate, these are my goals. The roadblock many times is just that mindset of, not necessarily a fear factor, but more of a lack of understanding factor of, well, how do you get there? And so that uncertainty kind of stops you in your tracks, right? It's I want to do this. I feel like it's the right thing to do for all these reasons and my goals and whatever. But getting there is a lot of times unclear, especially if what's been told to them all along is that, oh, you got to go get a single family rental house and you got to do this and you got to do that. But knowing the right people, right, and knowing how to get involved in these things, right? So it could be, you know, as an example, like people that know you, Julie, right? They're gonna know like investing in real estate is just super accessible, right? But that gap is really there for a lot of people. And so I really enjoy bridging that gap and just bringing people from this is what I want, this is where I want to go, I don't know how to get there, and just being able to draw them in to, you know, to bridging that. And then it's really fun for them because they're like, oh, I didn't realize that, right? You know.
Right. Well, and
yeah.
it okay, to your point where you're saying, and I said something, I'm going to backtrack real fast and say, I said,
Yeah, sure.
you know, syndications are very inaccessible. And I'm going to put an asterisk by that, in that this has nothing to do. You're like, I'm like, amen, preach, love it all. But I'm like, I'm backtracking to cover my own behind. And that is that it's not that it's inaccessible, it's that there is a lack of understanding as to, like, you, to your point, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to find this. So let's make this simple.
Right.
My family, my kids and I try new recipes often. Where we live, we don't get to, you know, have all the luxuries of, you know, restaurants around us. So, hey, we want to make donuts. So if you want to make donuts, it's really easy. You just go to YouTube, you go to, you know, Google, you do your web search, you watch just a few videos, you find some recipes, and boom, you're done. But oftentimes people, when it comes to real estate investing, they're literally the deer in the headlights. Let's just go to the Peter Rabbit movie. And if people haven't seen that, they need to see it. It's hilarious. And there's this deer literally stuck in the headlights, and it just says headlights, right? And I think that that's how a lot of people are. Like, just YouTube that clip. If you're listening, just YouTube that clip. It's hilarious. And it represents how most people are. They're like, I really want to do this, but headlights, like, it's overwhelming. It's too much. I can't handle it. And it's really quite simple.
It's true. And, you know, uncertainty, I don't know if somebody said it or if I made it up, but, you know, uncertainty stops people. I forget the quote now that I started it, but uncertainty just stops people, right? If you're looking at something and you don't know the next steps, that uncertainty, you know, that's in your head, it just freezes you, and it makes you, you know, it makes you just stop in your tracks. Even if there's an overwhelming need to get to the end, that uncertainty kind of stops you. It's not necessarily a fear. It's just like, I don't want to take the next step because I don't know what it is. Now, some people don't face that. It's like, I know where I want to go, I'm just going to jump. You know,
those people are very few. I'm swimming in that pool. That's my life. That's me. And I'm like, there really aren't very many people in this pool over here.
A lot of people want to know what the next step is before they jump off the cliff. You're right.
Right. Do you have a parachute?
That's right. I mean, there's ways to mitigate it for sure.
For sure.
But yeah, so you know, it's a lot of fun to kind of bring and bridge that gap, and it's not that far of a leap, right? It's really not. It's just that it's unknown. And so if you think of like the mindset of, people can relate to single family homes all day, they own one, right? And that mindset of, okay, I understand appreciation, I understand the value of real estate, you know, somewhat from the single family home perspective. So there's an understanding there of how to do that, but then to bridge that into, we primarily invest in apartment buildings, to bridge that from there to apartment buildings, you know, we try and start with what they know, and then, you know, bring them along that journey with us in a short conversation of, well, this is what we do, you know, and it's really just you with other investors, and you have a team of people beside you that are doing all the work. You're putting up all the money, and you get to participate. Everything flows through to you first as the investor, because we can't do what we do without you. And you participate in all the benefits, including all the incentives the government likes to give us, and whatever else. You participate in that as a full ownership, you know, partner. So, yeah, I mean, the accessibility of investing in real estate has never been better. You know, the syndication model is a great model. It's a term not many people understand, so it scares them, but it's at the core of it is extremely accessible, and it's simple to understand. But it comes down to relationships, right? You got to know the right people, and you got to trust them, because you're putting your money in their hands, and you trust them with that, right? It's a business almost, right? So anyway, we really enjoy the journey with the investors.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun to support people in growing their understanding on something. And by the way, if you haven't already, if you're listening, you haven't already checked out the YouTube playlist Syndication Made Simple, just go to the Conscious Investor YouTube page, because there's literally a short video on all the terms broken down into super simple daily vernacular that you will understand, instead of, large words that you feel lost with. But, it's all about relationships. So I find myself regularly saying to people, this is because I am sure we are kindred spirits on that. I don't think we've met somebody that isn't already our friend. Like, we're walking in a world full of friends. Like, right? So I just talk to all sorts of people all the time. And what I find is that, most people don't realize this is a word of mouth, particularly the investments that I do. And I'm wondering, if you are, particularly, investing in 506Bs, which are for sophisticated and accredited, or just Cs for accredited only.
So we like the 506B model because, again, I really like the idea of, if someone wants to invest with us, then I really want them to have that opportunity. It takes a relationship, of course. I mean, the part of, the 506B rule is, we have to know the people, right? But that doesn't mean we have to have known them for 10 years, right? We get to know them. And that's part of the journey as well, and also part of the fun. But I like the 506B model. I like being able to bring in sophisticated investors along with accredited investors. I think, again, it goes back to, if someone really wants to invest in real estate and they want to do it, passively, where it's not their time in the equation, and still get all the benefits, then, I mean, they should be able to. And so we make that accessible to them. Yeah.
I love that. I just can't even wrap my head about going back to single family houses. I know there's cash flow, I get that, but the benefits, and just like, it makes me cringe now at this point. I'm just like, I will never go back. And here I say I'll never, never say never, but the benefits are so amazing. You and your wife, I mean, she's part of this, just like my husband is part of my investing. I did fire him from my company. And it's kind of a
How did he
joke,
take it? I
mean, I said, I love you and I want to stay married happily to you. He's now a managing broker of a residential, office, real estate office. So
and doing quite well. I mean, from what I've seen, I mean, he's a rock star. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, how about you stay in your space? Because it's just good to like zero in, focus, and crush whatever it is that you're doing. So, unfortunately, bittersweet. It's not a bad thing for us. We still travel, I mean, we still travel together and live in each other's real estate ponds a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But, how do you and your wife, I think this is interesting to backtrack a little bit. Like, a lot of people, they are in a marriage or they're in a partnership, and there might be some friction because one of them wants to go down this crazy path. So how do you and your wife, manage that?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I have an amazing wife. That's step one in the management process.
This is true.
that cannot be overlooked whatsoever.
Marry right people.
And maybe even stepping back a little further. I mean, you didn't ask, but maybe to fill in a little bit of a gap. My background is, I started in engineering. I quickly decided I didn't want to do the analytical side of it because I like the people side. So I quickly moved into more leadership type roles, right? And doing project management, leading large teams, all this type of stuff. And so that was my background. And so enter into the world of, hey, babe, I got this brilliant idea. I've really been looking into this, and I think we need to go down the path of buying apartment buildings and bringing investors along with us. It's a big leap, right? Almost, and as far as accepting that. And so, yeah, you want to make sure jumping into that side of the business or into any new venture, that your spouse is on board. Unfortunately for me, Nikki was always on board. She knows me well. She knows that if I've decided to go into this, then it's been well thought out. But even still, it's a journey, right? It's, I've analyzed it, I've looked at it, I've decided, yeah, this is the venture we're going to go do. But there's still, you've got to bring your spouse along with you, right? Don't assume, and I hope listeners are listening to this, right? Don't assume that because you have this brilliant idea that's going to make you a lot of money and it's going to help a lot of people in the process, that your spouse understands every detail that you've been mulling over for the last months, right? Because they don't. And so it's important to kind of bridge that gap and actually give them time, time not as in, hey, let's sit down for 30 minutes over lunch, but time is in, hey, let's sit down and let me tell you what I'm thinking about, and give them time to digest it. The other thing that's key for us, so we're goal setters. Kind of always been that way. I'm a pretty driven person. When you set your mind to it, just go do it. I think you're very similar to, like, see you
Get it done.
Right. It's like, we want to go do this. Let's go. If we got to cut down the top of the mountain to achieve it, well, we'll figure out a way to do that. And we're both kind of that way. She actually, in her job, she works for a nonprofit, and they're big into goal setting. They're big into leadership. They bring up students as leaders in what they do, and it's awesome. And so we have this kind of mentality, but even between us, of, let's set some goals, and let's go achieve them. So what's been important for us in that same kind of atmosphere is, so now, and COVID actually helped us with this, because everybody started working from home. It didn't help with everything, but it did help with this. And we were working from home, especially when the kids went back to school finally. We were like, hey, we should really, we're here, we should go do date days, where we just go to lunch, and that's been super helpful. And what we started doing is, for a lunch break once a week, we'll talk about the week, we'll talk about what we have going on, and this kind of thing. Not so programmatically, if you will, but still just that importance of being on the same page about where you're going, kind of what's moving you there, to understand what she's doing that week. She gets a picture of what I'm doing that week. And that has been super helpful, just to get on the same page each week. I mean, we also set yearly goals. We're those kind of people. And so I think that's
how you go places in life.
That's right.
You're going to go somewhere.
Right.
Let me put it that another way. Time is going to pass. No matter what, time will pass. And you can use that time really well and invest it wisely and strategically, or you can lose it. So it's like, use it or lose it, but you don't get it back.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I can make money, right? You can figure out how to, you can get a job, you can, I don't know, you can sell donuts after you've made them in your house, you can find a way to make money, but I can never find a way to get back those hours that I missed, last week, and honestly, that was part of the driving force for me personally to start looking into this business model, was that time factor itself, because you're right. It comes down to kind of what we said with our investors when I was talking earlier. Everybody has a mindset of what they want, or a goal of, hey, sometimes it's just a glimmer of an idea, right? It's like, well, this is what I want. But without actually trying to sit down and think about, well, what would I have to do to get there? It's just an idea, right? And so that process, for both Nikki and I, of sitting down and thinking about, well, by the end of this year, this is what would make it successful. And I actually just did this again, kind of a couple of weeks ago at a mastermind group I was a part of, where we wrote down, this time next year, I would feel successful if these things had happened, right? And it wasn't necessarily business, right? It was like family, faith. It was, your relationship with your wife, with your kid, whatever, right? The whole shebang. And this is what would define success for me, looking back, a year from now, if I'd achieved these things. And I think that's so important for people, and it's missed because we're so busy, right? And I think, when I can help people extract themselves, investors, other people doing what I'm doing, whomever, but to help other people kind of extract themselves from the busyness, even for a little bit, And just to look at that perspective of, what you want to do for the most part, now, even if it's a glimmer of an idea, but, write down some steps, even if it's like just 3 bullets,
I think 3 is a magic number when it's like, if you have, because then you can get the momentum. And if you're, just add 3 more, you finished 1, add the 3 more that come after the last one, on like just continually adding the 3.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think for me, I started a habit a long time ago, where in the morning I would say, okay, these are the 3 things I'm going to do in the morning. I haven't always been great at it. I'm not some superstar goal setter, but it has been more consistent than not. We'll say that.
Yes.
But hey, here's the 3 big things, or even not even big things, but here's the 3 things I want to get done today. Picking one of them as, what's the most important next step? If I could look at my day, and even if I could just look at my week, right, and say, I know I got to get some of this done, but this is the most important next step. I think even that simplification of saying, what's my most important next step, then that's so defining. And you can also just kind of filter off the rest of the stuff that's on your dashboard of your computer sometimes, right? And just focus on that one thing. Minimize all the screens and focus on that one thing,
That's just it, is that you were talking about busyness, right? And I've spoken about the difference between being busy and being productive. And that's the difference. The difference is how, and I'm looking around at my desk right now. I just got back from this event, and I like sticky notes, and I'm looking at this thinking like, this looks like a disaster, but it's actually very productive and, keeping me on track to, finish things up. But you have to close out the screens. You have to, like you said, you have to focus in and say, this gets my attention. And so you can't give your attention to all things. So evaluate and say, what's trying to, knock me off course just by taking my attention.
Right.
You get to give your attention to whatever you want.
Yeah. And I think, and that's, and even stepping it a little broader picture of, maybe focus on the business for a little bit longer. For me, you're right. Things get so cluttered, right? I got 2 screens. I got this screen on. I got another huge screen here on the side. And during the day, I'll look up sometimes, and it's like I got this open, this open, this open, this open. And you're right, to just focus in and be able to say, okay, what can I just close and clear out, to really focus my time is so important. The other thing that kind of triggered in my mind as we were talking is, it's not just about business either. It's, I'm married, we have 2 kids, we got a dog, we got busy, we got whatever, right? Like 90% of the rest of us, right?
Yeah,
and there's no time in our day, no matter what anybody does, there's never any time. But it's been very important. And Nikki's helped a lot with this, right? Because again, I can get that kind of tunnel vision sometimes. And Nikki's helped out a lot with this as well, where we kind of step back, and it's like, for our week, it can't just be about business. It can't just be about what she's doing at her work, right? You need to create that extra bandwidth for family, right? You need to create that extra bandwidth for, as an example, we're taking our kids out on a date day tomorrow. Or date night, sorry. Tomorrow's Friday when we're recording this. And we decided, okay, you're taking our son, I'm taking our daughter, and we're going to go and just do a date night. And it sounds so simple, and people do it all the time. But for us, for me, I get so busy that unless I force myself to take that step back, it's been 3 months, or it's been a month. And I want to throw that in there for people, because, there's a lot of people listening to your show. They're doing business, their hours are crazy. There's people that are listening to your show. They want to invest in real estate, and their lives are super crazy. Right. And that's why they want to look into passively investing. And without that trigger in your mind about, it's not just about business. I didn't get in business to lose my lifestyle. It maybe is just a great, thing to remember, right? I didn't start this business to lose my lifestyle. I started this business so that I could have a lifestyle that I want, but I shouldn't sacrifice my lifestyle today in the process. And I just feel like that's so important for people. And without that balance, honestly, things just get out of whack quick. Right.
Very, very quick. So I love that. I don't think enough people are actually doing date times with their kids. And for me, it's always been easier to snag some time with my daughter by way of how our schedules work. And I'm very intentional. It's also one of her love languages, but I have to be very intentional with our son.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy because he's bigger than me, but up until 13 and bigger than his mom, but up until, I mean, like 6 months ago, well, he'll still do it at home, but we were out on our date time, and here's this, like awesome kid that's just a big guy comes in the restaurant, sits on mom's lap, and it's like, Mom, I want to show you this YouTube thing. It's almost like the cuddly bear. It's just like our kids, no matter how old they're getting, they still have this childlikeness that needs that attention. And it's so easy, especially as kids get older, to assume that, oh, well, they don't need my attention and affection, or they don't just need me to sit there and watch a show with them, or they like, our kids need our time and our attention. And it's really simple things.
Yeah. And, kind of this path that we've been on in this podcast is kind of, the goals mindset, making things accessible, understanding people's goals, helping them out with it. And then now kind of talking through some of these goals. I mean, honestly, it's kind of, the big trigger for me, probably the next level down for our discussion, the big trigger for me and even getting into this business was that lifestyle change. Mm-hmm. It was that, there was a lot of uncertainty in my career several years ago, and that there was a trigger event there where it was just like, man, do I want to run the risk of, having to set aside a lot of what my family has grown accustomed to, of what we enjoy doing, of where we enjoy living, for someone else making that decision for me, and that's where it was a trigger point for me. And it's honestly a trigger point for a lot of passive investors. We know that they're trying to get to the point where, hey, I want to start really building up my passive income so that I don't have to be 100% reliant on my active income, and that it rings true with so many people, especially a lot of our investors, of that just mindset of, I just want to create that additional bandwidth. I just want to create some buffer there, because again, my goal in life is not to work, 1,000 hours a week and then die rich. My goal in life is actually to enjoy that life, to have that lifestyle. And if it means, hey, I've got to be a little sacrificial now in what I'm doing, to set some goals, to plan it out, to think ahead and say, hey, instead of doing this big thing here with our money, maybe we just reposition some of that into a passive investment. But that kind of determined, what word am I like, purposeful, mindset of, we know what we want. So if we don't do anything, I know I'm not going to get it. If I do something, at least I'm going to get one step closer. And that kind of one step closer idea is what I really try and draw people towards, because making that giant leap, right, is so far-fetched in people's mind. It's like, oh, I'll never get there. But I love hiking. I know that you guys love mountain biking as well, but I love hiking. I love getting in the mountains. And what's fun about that is you get so far along and you look back and you're like, I can't believe I walked that far. Right.
Yes.
Right. And
every time.
And investing is the same way, right? If you allow yourself to simply focus on, and really anything, it doesn't have to be investing, anything. It's, if you allow yourself to simply focus on what's the next step I got to take, as long as it's heading in the direction of that goal, what's that next step I got to take? Before long, it's just like that hiking trip you went on with your family. You're sitting up at the peak and you're looking down at where your car might be way in the distance, and you're thinking to yourself, good night, I really went far. And it's the same thing, right? You take one step and then you focus on the next. You go to the next tree in the distance as you're hiking, you go to that next interval of your investing as you're going along. And before you look back, and man, you've accumulated enough passive income to really make a dent in where you want to go. And that's a huge step for a lot of people.
Huge.
Right?
Well, and using your hiking, analogy, is that sometimes when we're hiking, or like where we hike, a lot of times there is rocky terrain. And
Mhm.
sometimes you kind of stumble a little bit or catch your foot or something. It kind of,
Right.
jars you a little bit. Maybe you even fall a little bit. But the idea is you get back up, you haven't lost anything, and you can course correct. And so that distance between the finish line and where you are today is there's such a chasm between that, and yet you can close that distance by just simply focusing in, going back to focus in on just
Mhm.
what step do I need, what's that one action I can take in my investing or in my marriage or with my kids, or to get fit and healthy, or to grow my mindset so I can, grow in all these other ways.
Yeah, because they're all interrelated, right? It's when you're sitting at the starting line, if I feel like the starting line's always moving for one thing, but if you're standing at the starting line, right?
That's okay, as long as the goalposts aren't moving.
That's true, yeah. But you're standing at the starting line and you're looking at where you got to go, and it can be, honestly, tying it back to kind of where we started some of the conversation
Right.
of that leap from, I kind of know where I want to go, but man, there's a big gap of understanding how to get there. But sometimes really all it takes is that next step, and getting into the relationship side that we talked about earlier. For the type of investing that we do at Ridgeline Equity, we have to have that relationship. And honestly, sometimes people just, they'll see what we post on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, or they'll hit me on a podcast and they'll just reach out, and just that simple conversation, right? You can kind of see that
Mhm.
light bulb starting to come on, and you're like, oh wow, yeah, I didn't realize that it was that straightforward. And then they start getting educated a little bit more, and understanding a little bit more. Maybe they go watch your YouTube videos, but they get that glimmer in their mind, and then you can kind of see it like play out right in front of you. Of, they were at a starting line, they took a small step that was probably pretty uncomfortable, right? Reaching out to somebody they may not know well, right? And
Mhm.
then they took that small step. They started to get to know other people. They started to get to know the sponsor, if you will, for a syndication. And then before they know it, they came along that journey, whether it was through educational materials, conversations, or whatever. And now they're at the point where it's like, it really isn't that big of a leap for me anymore. And then they turn back and they look and they're like, oh man, I really came pretty far.
Yeah.
And then especially, when they start investing and become much more active in the passive investing, and also realize that they really did not have to put in a huge amount of time, because that's people's real fear is, if I jump into this, I'm already so loaded. How on earth am I ever
Yeah.
going to keep track of this stuff? And there's a reason it's called passive. you know right?
Exactly.
There's a reason you have two sides of a syndication, an active side and a passive side. And that passive side is really empowering for a lot of people, and for a lot of people it is the right step for them in their investing journey in real estate. And simply because they have so much going on. So yeah.
Definitely not a time suck, except for those of us who catch the fever and we're like, this is so remarkable. I need to do this full time, and I need to help everybody in the world find out about this.
That's that's right. Then
you know,
then it becomes quite a time consuming endeavor.
right, right. But it's all pure joy. You'd mentioned something about, that moment, several years ago, where you felt like your job was on the line. And I just got off a call with someone, and I was telling them I was in a public school teacher. I was 28 years old. I was, teaching for a district, and next thing you know, they're handing out pink slips.
Oh
And
wow, yeah.
fortunately, I was not one of the people that received a pink slip. But for me, that was like it was a big awakening moment, because it was like, I thought I was, quote, safe. So there's
Right.
certain job sectors where we kind of feel like we're safe and
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to take our jobs away. Like, they're not going to take firefighters away. We have to have firefighters and cops
Right.
and teachers. Like, come on, the community has to have these people, and it feels all safe and comfortable. And then no, they start handing out pink slips and laying people off.
Yeah.
So like, these are real things. And like, understanding that we are all expendable is
Mm-hmm.
very difficult to come to terms with. But in all reality, you are expendable. Your
Mm-hmm.
company can be acquired by another company and you're gone. Like,
Yeah.
anything can happen. And so being in control and like setting up those passive investments so that, God forbid something happens, it's not devastating to
Right.
you. You have another plan, you have a plan in place.
Right. Yeah. And I can totally relate to what you were saying. For me, back then it was, I wasn't concerned about my immediate job, but overall the industry sector that I was in was getting a huge shakeup, and I think we all get into that position, like you said, where it's like, man, that's not going to happen to me. And we just start cranking through our life. We're going to soccer games, we're mountain biking on the
We're
weekend,
living.
and we're living. Exactly.
So
and
focus on living. We're not really thinking about some of the other things.
yeah, but and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but industries change, and
Yeah.
technology changes, and having that happened in my career, to some point we can always relate to it because we see it happening in other people's careers, but we don't think it's ever going to happen to us. But you're like one technology step away from it happening to you. I mean, that's the reality, right?
Yes,
You're one
that
technology
is.
step away from that happening to you, or one kind of industry slight change away from it, at least being something to consider in any industry. And so, yeah, I think, that again, not to say it too much, but that was the giant realization for us. And I think for many people is that, what, I've got to find something that is not dependent on my time. If I can make money in my sleep, then great. That's a whole lot more time in my day that I'm making money,
That's right. That's right.
If I don't actually have to be there in I always have this picture, Julie, of like, I have this bucket of money, I'm investing it here, and all these little bits of money are walking around and doing all the work for me, and they're making more little bits of money. I mean, I know it's a weird picture, but
it's okay. I have money babies. I'm like, I want my money to come together and make babies. Like, just make more babies.
That's right. I mean, it's an interesting thought, whether it's, weird or not, I don't know, but to have like this idea of like, when you go off and invest your money into real estate, especially real estate where you can force the appreciation into it, right? Where you're not so dependent on the market alone, right? Which, apartments are in that sector where you can force appreciation into them. You're literally watching your money start from whatever it is today and going off and making lots of other monies, right?
Yes.
And that's a very unique feeling from the mindset we just started talking about, which is, I'm going to work, I'm one technology step away from being at risk, in which I might have to take another month, 2 months, depending on what industry you're in, to find the next job. I might have to move, I might have to do a lot of things, versus, for me, if I had some passive income coming in, well, maybe that creates enough bandwidth that we can stay here, we can do what we want to do, we don't have to move, we don't have to make super life changes. Maybe there's enough bandwidth there to buy me some time. And that was kind of the beginning step for me. It's good. The steps gone much beyond that now, but that was that initial thought,
beginning.
Yeah,
yes.
That was that initial thought. And I think for a lot of people, whether it's jobs, or there was a friend of mine recently that, one of their kids had something happen to them, which was a trigger event for them. And they just quickly realized, like, man, life is short. Life is super short. Unfortunately, their son's good, but it was that just shock to the system that I think we all need from time to time, of for you to really step back and think to yourself, man, am I just kind of cruising along here? Or do I need to make a change so that my life is a little bit more intentional, right? Maybe not even quantum leaps intentional, but just a little bit more intentional about, is for me and my family, are we going to end up really where we want to be, or are we just kind of living right now? It's a slight change in thought, but it's very different end point, perhaps, or even getting to the end point, let's say.
Right. Well, and we always, people are going to get tired of hearing me say this, but consistency over intensity, right? It will serve you better to just be consistent in doing what you want. Brady, I have loved this conversation. I cannot believe how fast the time has flown by because I mean, we spoke a lot when we were at that event in July. And so I'm like, yep, I knew that we would not have a problem having a great conversation that is going to be valuable to others. But what is the best way for people to connect up with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me on LinkedIn. They can also find me on Facebook. If people are looking for some ideas of how to invest, we just created a short pamphlet on, creative ways to fund your first deal. That's out on our website, ridgelineenquity.com. Go check us out there as well. People can also just email me. I'm pretty approachable, right?
He's very approachable. Don't worry.
Yeah. So you can also just email me, and I'm happy to talk with anybody we can, and if we can help out, even better. So yeah. Thanks, Julie. First of all, for just having me on the show. It's been super fun. It was really great meeting you and your husband at that conference, and this was a lot of fun for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Brady. Listeners, if this has served you well, then leave a review. Let us know what you got from this. Let us know a step that you're going to take, and, go check out ridgelineequity.com, right? Did I get it right?
Right.
Yes. Go check out Brady's, website, download things, connect up with him. And until next time, live big, love bigger. What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.